Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from the capital of Northern BC, Prince George. Beautiful day in Prince George. Can you imagine? It's nearly November, and still no snow. It won't last though, So special day today. I have a special individual and a friend. I've known her for a long time, Catherine Hansen.
Nice
Catherine,
to see you.
welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, you've been in the media and in the news here for the last 20 plus years.
20 plus, definitely.
20?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well,
From where?
I'm from where? I'm from Prince George. I was born and raised here.
You're one of the only two.
Yeah.
No, I'm not quite. Used to be that way.
Yeah. Don't hold it against me. No.
No.
I mean, I was born and raised in Prince George. I grew up in North Machaco.
Oh, wow.
I lived on Bench Drive when Bench Drive was gravel.
Yeah.
Before it was paved.
Yeah.
I grew up doing dance and theater with Judy Russell and Bunny and Alex Murray.
Yeah.
I actually started at the age of 5 Highland dancing.
Yeah.
And my mom had Highland dance.
With Judy then? Because
Not with Judy then. There was a group of Highland dancers, and I honestly can't remember her name. But quickly after I started Highland dancing, I started with Judy probably at the age of 6.
Yeah.
And at that time, she was teaching dance in the St. Michael's Hall.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I know she had taught in Bunny's basement.
Yeah. My daughters, 2 daughters, they are now in their mid to later 40s. They were all part of Judy Russell, and dance and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing individual. Yeah.
It was a great place to grow up.
Yeah.
In the dance studio.
Yeah.
And so I started just doing ballet, and I did Highland dance. And then at the age of 7, I auditioned for a theater workshop production.
Yeah.
With Bunny and Alex Murray, and it was The Sound of Music.
Yeah.
And Jim Clough, if you know who Jim Clough is, was the Captain Von Trapp.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there were, I think, 7 or 9 kids, and we were the Von Trapp children. And
family, yeah.
It was that production that got me hooked.
Yeah.
And I was into being on stage, and I wanted to perform. And so I grew up with the dance studio, and I always just sang. And
Does that come natural to you? You're a very good singer and musician, so was that always that way, or did it start there when you were with Judy Russell?
I mean, it started there, and she definitely fostered that. And Bunny, her mom, was very good and instrumental in really pulling the talent out of the students.
Yeah.
And the opportunities that we had to perform all throughout the community and at Vanier Hall and at the Playhouse. And just like kids these days go to hockey tournaments, we went to dance festivals and traveled around and got experience and exposure.
Yeah. Very much part of Prince George, right? Judy Russell and her family and Bill, and then same as the symphony, and all part of a city like Prince George. How could that possibly be? Mm-hmm. Because, in 20, 30 years ago, it was maybe half of what it is now. And, and it only was incorporated in 1914, which is, if I think Europe, or Eastern Canada, very young.
We're relatively young, yes.
But now you look at Prince George, and we were just talking when I kind of gave you the tour of the apartment here, or our studio, is we can see behind us the new swimming pool, and then right next to it the museum. Mm-hmm. Now we need still the arts building, that everybody has been working on for a long time. It's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you say it's going to happen, because I'd like to believe that
it has to happen.
It would happen here in Prince George.
Yeah.
I think it's been coming for a really long time, and it would only help foster what is already a really strong arts community in Prince George.
But it's the one place that should be there is not yet there, but It should be. Maybe that's the next big push that we have to give it. Right?
Maybe the Four Seasons pool site.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and you've been in radio for so long, you know, in some form or fashion. How did that all come about? Because
yeah, well, so I mean, we talked about growing up dancing and performing, and when I was 18, I went on a tour across Canada. It was Canada's 125th birthday, and they put a call out for 125 young singers, dancers, and actors to go on a tour, and we did a show celebrating Canada.
Yeah.
And we traveled for 5 months all across Canada on a bus, and it was an amazing, amazing experience.
Yeah.
And at that point I thought, okay, I could do this. I could do this for a career. So I signed up to go to Sheridan College in Oakville, Ontario, and I went to the music theater program for 3 years.
In Oakville?
In Oakville,
wow.
Yep. And I worked, you know, you said, does that come easy? Like, yes, it comes easy, but you do have to work at it, just like you work at any craft.
And then BCIT followed that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a zigzag direction in that I was in Ontario and I was working in professional theater. And I said to myself, I don't like it here. I don't like Ontario. I never felt connected to anything in Ontario. I mean, it was fun. You could go to Toronto and do big city things. But I'm a BC girl. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, absolutely. So I came back here and I thought, okay, I want to do something that I can use my brain. And that's not saying that you don't use your brain to be an actor, a singer, a dancer.
No.
But still incorporate some kind of performance aspect.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm going to try and go to BCIT. So I did. Yeah. So then I went to BCIT.
4 years?
It's only a 2-year program when I did it.
Yeah.
I think
got a degree in journalism?
Broadcast journalism.
Broadcasting.
Yeah. So then it's, again, the zigzag of how I ended up back in Prince George. Yeah. I was going to school in Vancouver. Yeah. And throughout that time, I had worked at Vista Radio. Before Vista Radio was CJCI, if you remember that, and the Max, I think, or the X, and then I had worked also at CKPG, what was 550 CKPG when it was AM, and Country 101. So I'd done, being a cruiser person over the summer, reporting live from events. So I'd worked for both of those organizations, and in the fall of must have been 1999. Okay. I was going into my second year of BCIT, and Terry Shepard, who was the general manager at CJCI for a long time, called me and said, there's a job in Williams Lake at our affiliate. Yeah. Do you want to come for a month and cover the municipal election? Yeah. And so at BCIT in your second year, they're pushing you out the door. They want you to go and do a practicum anyway. Yeah. So they said, okay, we'll go and get paid and do this practicum. Yeah. So I was working in Williams Lake. I was coming home. Every weekend, my friends were here. My family was here. Yeah. And I thought, okay, Williams Lake, I'm going back to Vancouver. Yeah. Game changer. I met a man.
You fell in love?
I fell in love.
Yeah.
I did.
Doesn't it always happen that way? Isn't nature designed it that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I met a fellow who is from Prince George and had quite a decent job here. I met him, I was home for the weekend, and I met this man. And so I thought, okay, well, I can still be in the broadcast industry. I can have the comfort of working at home. So I eventually moved to Prince George, and I worked at CJCI for 6 months. Yeah. And then I moved over to CKPG, or PGTV, which it was at the time. Yeah. And that was 2001. Yeah.
It was then on 4th Avenue? Where was it located?
On 6th Avenue, beside...
in the basement?
It was, in the basement a little bit, but beside the outrigger.
Yeah, that's where it was, yeah. I remember being there, interviewed. Yeah.
Yes.
Old couch.
Yeah, it was a very aging building. We had resident mice, and The best story I have about that building is one night I was working a late shift and I was doing the 11 o'clock news, and my coworker said, "There's a guy at the door and he says he's Jim Pattison." And I don't know who he is. And this is when, after Jim had bought, for a while we were Monarch Broadcasting, and then Pattison bought the station. And he says, "He's Jim Pattison, I don't know what to do." Yeah. And I walked up and there was Jimmy.
Yeah.
Knocking on the back door at 7:30 at night,
isn't
coming
he
for a visit.
Amazing guy? Oh, what? Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Coming for a visit.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I've heard that, your station is a little bit old and run down, so I thought I'd just come down and see for myself.
Take a look myself.
I'm in town for Can4 meetings." And
yeah.
And I've heard that about him, that he would, someone spotted him at Walmart. I came to check out the competition, or he'd go through the tills at Save-On. Just showed up one night, and I said out of the side of my mouth to my coworker, "Call the general manager, get him down here."
Yeah, right away.
Yeah. So ever since then, after that, whenever I saw Jimmy, he would say, "Oh, hi, Catherine. Are you still working the late shift?"
Isn't he amazing?
He has a memory like I've never
I know
experienced.
that. I know. I have the pleasure of knowing him and the privilege of knowing him a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an amazing individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So. Now you fell in love in Prince George, and he's still your husband today.
He's still my husband today.
What's his name again?
His name is Dennis McCarthy.
Dennis McCarthy. Yeah. And you have 2 children, a boy and a girl.
I do.
The boy's name is Hunter.
He's Hunter. Yeah.
And
the girl's name is Sophie.
Sophie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's 17. She's in grade 12.
Yeah.
And Hunter's 14, and he's in grade 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is she swimming coach, or is she in swimming?
Oh no, she's not in swimming. Actually, it's so funny because my husband is an athlete, and he grew up as an athlete, and he excelled at higher level athletics. He was very much into wrestling, and wrestled at SFU, and was, I think, the silver medalist in high school nationals.
Wow.
And was quite a high achiever in wrestling.
Yeah.
And here I am, this artist.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you talk about the level of commitment that goes into being an artist as to being an athlete. And they actually are very similar.
Yeah.
So
I believe that.
Yeah. From the beginning, he had a really good understanding of the commitment and the time that it takes to work on your craft.
Yeah.
So, and then with our kids, it's funny because my daughter is a singer.
Yeah.
And she's into dramatic arts.
And Hunter is in wrestling.
And my son is a wrestler.
Yeah.
So
isn't it amazing?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you hope that they want to pursue the things that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's a gift.
And they, in this case, do it natural because they love it, right? Yeah.
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 So now you work with CKPG for 18 years. That's a long time, Catherine.
Yeah. They were really good to me.
Yeah.
I worked full-time until I had my daughter.
Yeah.
And then I worked part-time.
Yeah.
And for a bit of time when my kids were really little, I was just on call, or I would fill in if someone was sick or if someone was on holidays. And that worked really well for me.
Yeah.
So having that flexibility to be able to, and isn't that why we live in Prince George? So you can afford to work a part-time job and be at home with the kids, and I wouldn't trade anything for the years that I got to spend with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So important. And then Prince George changed, the region changed, and during that 20 some odd years and 25 years that you were involved in all of that, you've seen it change. You were very close to it because you were part of the news, and then after that, obviously CBC and Daybreak. So you were part of all of that. So now with CKPG, from Jimmy knocking on the door and said, "I think we need a new building." Yeah. So then that all changed, and then even the radio stations like CKPG physically changed, but also their business models started changing. How did that all kind of look to somebody on the inside?
To somebody on the inside, I mean, I think technology has been, when I look back, I think about technology as being the massive change.
Yeah.
When I started at CKPG, the camera people had huge cameras, and they had huge decks with big tapes as big as your book.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's a chip like this, and the cameras are portable. You can put it in a backpack or a purse.
No problem.
And then with radio too, I mean, we started on carts, which is reel to reel, and a cart, it's similar to an 8-track.
Yeah.
Right. So the tape and splicing and I do think when I started there, it wasn't records. There was a digital automation of the music, but now it's all digital.
Yeah.
It's all hard drive and it's all just programmed in and it just plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the technology behind it.
Yes.
And we are part of that as well, because if we're sitting here now and we're doing a podcast, 10 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, podcasting was not really known 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And even when I started doing it here 3-4 years ago, just before COVID, actually, we were working with Shaw and doing a show, history of the BC forest industry, and we did about 35 there, and then COVID came, and then we all kind of did our COVID thing, and then said, well, should we start again, do podcast? We should get a studio, and then if you get now you have to do it, professional. So and so we got all the lights and all the other things that you're so familiar with, and the right cameras all around us, and the setting, and but now we are seen around the world. Yeah. Around the world. Yeah. Add to that, so we're doing podcasting that is usually seen by in excess of 100,000 people, usually between 80 to 100,000 and more, and even internationally. Add to that Facebook and the other part of social media, and be very active in that. And I have to tell you, this one is that I have such an amazing team that work with me, Andrew, Scott, and a number of other people that work with me on doing a number of things, including all forms of social media, including podcasting. And so we, and I'm also an athlete. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. Can you believe that?
I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's incredible.
Yeah. So I, in 2017, and I won in my category in the northern region, qualified me for the provincials, came in second in my category for physique, and then third for bodybuilding, qualified me for the nationals and for the Arnolds. And and I was then, I'm going to be 82 in another week or so, November the 1st. And and so now I'm training again to compete. Hopefully November is a little bit close. I may compete in January or February again, trying to get to the Arnolds, or to the Arnolds, in next year. And so what we were doing is we were doing a video of me training, and then from Arnold we got a shirt, one of his shirts with Arnold on it, and so we had that on the video this week. I think I got 85 blips, likes on it, and all together in the last 28 days our postings are at 1.2 million. Wow. 1.2 million?
Yeah.
All over the world. And part of that includes my books and then the other things, but of the last 28 days, I could not imagine that sitting in Prince George, because that's where it all happened, all of that, and then sending it out around the world, and then getting those kind of responses from all over the world.
Yep.
You know, and then when I first came here in July of 1965, with my $25.47, I sent telegrams to my parents. Would take a day to get there. I'm okay, stop, need money, stop, or something along those lines. Everything is okay. Now we think nothing of it. My phone can ring and somebody's calling me from Holland and saying, hi, hello, how are you doing? Yeah.
Or you can video with them too. Yeah.
And all of that.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how it all has changed?
It's amazing. I think about even, you know, when I started in media, about cell phones and how they've changed over 20 years. And we used to have a big
one was a shoe.
Suitcase.
Yeah.
I remember when I worked for CJCI, or what is now Vista, in 2000, there was a federal election, and because Prince George is divided between the two ridings, I had to drive to Fort St. John with my cell phone that was kind of a suitcase or a briefcase, and we had to wait for the people to hand count the ballot, and then they would come in and write the numbers on a blackboard, and then I had to pick up my cell phone and phone into our radio show. I mean, and you think how much things have changed even a few days ago with the municipal election, and how when you voted, it's an automated machine, and it counts. Yeah. But I do have to say, one thing that is difficult sometimes is that with my job at CBC, we cover a vast region of northern BC. We cover from Quesnel all the way up to Lower Post, and then we go to the Rockies all the way to Prince Rupert.
Kitimat, Prince Rupert,
and connectivity is still a huge issue in the north.
It is, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we lose internet, you know, we're reliant on internet to broadcast.
Doesn't happen very often that I know, because I listen to you guys a lot, because it's so popular, right?
Yeah, Prince Rupert is a little bit more, they struggle with their internet a little bit. So we're usually working around to make it happen. Yeah. But when there's big outages, it's hard. It can be tricky.
Yeah, but it's such a big province, right? I was born in Holland, you know, and then, you know, come to Prince George, and a place like us here, and saying, what are you going to go? Oh, I'm just going to drive to Vancouver this weekend. I'll come back on Monday. Are you kidding me? In Holland, you say, how long does that take? About 9 hours, somewhere, you know. In Holland, we go an hour, and then in Holland is gone. Now you're in Germany.
They don't believe it. They don't understand it. But I think we're hardy.
Yeah, we are.
We're used to it.
Yeah.
We're conditioned to it.
Yeah. If you think back about you know, the CKPG and all the time that you had there, are there anything funny things that you can remember? One of them was one not only funny but very interesting, speaking to the individual that knocked on the door at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
Jimmy Pattison. Let me just tell our listeners who Jimmy Pattison is. Jimmy Pattison is a fellow that, with all due respect, he's probably 92, 93 years old. He's one of the richest guys in Canada. He's worth about $12 billion. Started out with not very much money. You know, it's just typical for successful entrepreneurs, and he worked very, very hard, but he's a man of amazing credentials in terms of, you know, how he recognizes you as an employee. That is typical of a guy like Jimmy Pattison, an amazing individual, very, very successful, very involved in the industry in BC, because not only does he own the radio station here, stations here, and but also one of the largest grocery chains, Save On Food, is what he owns. And then in addition to that, he's the controlling shareholder of the largest forest company, virtually the largest one in the world, is Canfor, and that has a lot of their operations in the Prince George region. And but still, he still works 7 days a week.
Yep.
And he has his office, and he is excited if he sees somebody that he recognizes, especially people from the north. He's still Jimmy Pattison, a man of immense credentials. I just had to say that to our listeners, and you feel the same.
I've heard he gets up really early. And the older I get, the earlier I get up. And there is something special about that early morning.
Yeah. I'm going to be, as I said, 82 next week or so. And, I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. And then the other thing that I always do, I always make my bed. And, and then before I go, I kind of look back at my bed. And maybe I was 2 years in the Air Force. Maybe it's from that part, but I always do that. And then it makes me feel good. At least I started off the day well. And then I usually work, about 12, 13 hours a day. And then when I come home, and usually around 7 o'clock or between 7 and 8, and then watch a little bit of TV, and then I go to bed. And, when I walk into the bedroom, it feels so good as my bed is already, and so I like that, And I love what I'm doing, and I have a passion for what I do. That's why my employees gave me this, and it's hanging in the wall, and it's 2547 on it, and then underneath it says attitude, passion, work ethic. That to me is the foundation for me is attitude. Avoid the negative. Passion is, if you're so lucky to find something to do, and I know you do that you love to do, then it makes your whole life so much better. And it's actually, I'm writing another book that comes out in July next year, and it's Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream is the title for now, but something that talks about that. How do you go about finding your passion? It tells about people that have been very successful, others that went in one direction and then said at some point in life, maybe they were 30s or 40 years old, and saying, I want to do something different. And they did, and then really enjoyed life, So, and then the 2547 is what I had in my pocket when I came here, about 2 blocks away at the Greyhound station. And I couldn't speak the language. I didn't know a soul. I didn't have a job. Couldn't, but I wanted to build a mill, and I know I was going to do that. And then I wrote a book about that as well. And the Against All Odds. So yeah. Yeah. And that's how life goes.
That is how life goes, isn't it?
So a little bit more about you. Then at what point did you go to CBC?
So I've been at CBC for 3 years now.
It seems to me longer than that.
Yeah, it does seem. Well, I think we had a pandemic in there, and that either slowed down or sped up time. Yeah. I don't know. I got to a point where I was looking for something a little bit more. Yeah. My kids were a little bit older. I thought, okay, I could take a full-time job or work a little bit more, and an opportunity came up at CBC. Yeah. Now, my dad, who has passed away, always listened to the CBC. Yeah. And
I do too.
The 10 o'clock time signal. Yeah. I think that's ingrained in me. Yeah. And I think if he were alive, he would be incredibly proud that I was working there. Yeah. So that opportunity came up, and I took it. Yeah. And it's been great. And
then Daybreak in particular, right, has been so much of you.
So I'm a producer. So basically, I went from being in front of the camera to being more behind the scenes. Yeah. And so as a producer of a show, I I have the final word on content
Yeah.
as to what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And then I put all the elements of the program together.
Yeah.
So the day before, we're working on the show that comes in the morning.
So how does your day work then? Because it looks to me that it's a lot involved, because it seems to go so smooth. But the reason that it is going so smooth because it is well organized, that everything fits.
Yeah, and we have a great host, and
Yeah.
we have great on-air people
Yeah.
executing it.
Yeah.
So the difference was when I worked at CKPG, I would put my own show together and then I would be the host of it.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit different in that you're putting a show together for somebody else. So you
Yeah.
hope that the day before, you hope that all the elements that you've put together will still happen. And when our host calls John Brink to do an interview on his new book, then hopefully John Brink picks up the phone.
Yeah.
Because it is live radio.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
You know, so the
Yeah.
and then now in some cases, some of those programs end up in other locations as well?
Yeah.
Is it available to the other CBC stations in different regions?
Yeah, in some of the afternoon programming or in the morning, it's syndicated. It comes out of Toronto, and then it would go to all locations.
Yeah.
You know, at 10 o'clock, everybody hears Q. Just if you're in Manitoba, you hear Q at 10 o'clock Manitoba time, and then you hear Q at 10 o'clock BC time.
Yeah, yeah.
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 And it's all managed out of somebody in Vancouver is keeping track of the lines of what's going on each station. So I haven't been there, but I can imagine that it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and one time I was interviewed by CBC Vancouver, and I had a hard time finding because it was a big building to go into, and then I got there, and then we were sitting there, and then all around me was glass and different people, and then in between they had to read the news. They say, okay, we're just going to do the news, just sit there, and then I had somebody sitting next to me doing the news. It was kind of interesting, actually. I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
it's quite the office in Vancouver is quite spectacular.
Yeah.
And when I go there, I feel such a part of the corporation.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we're a bureau. We only have 5 to 7 people who work at our bureau. So it's sometimes you feel isolated, but then going down there, going to Vancouver, you feel more of a part of what everybody is doing.
Yeah, but I sometimes find, Catherine, is that, Canada is so much more, compared to the United States, so much more based on CBC, the national news, rather than, the ABC, CNN, and Fox, and all the other ones. In the States, the whole system is different, it appears.
Yeah.
Is that so? Yeah.
Well, what I know of the States, they do have a national radio station, NPR.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many people listen to that or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started talking about it, and then I started carrying on about other stuff. Tell me a little bit about interesting things that happened when especially when you were at CKPG. Now you had to organize it, then you had to present it.
Yeah.
You were it.
Yeah. Interesting things that happened. Okay. I thought you might ask me this question. So the Jim Pattison story is one of them.
Yeah.
I think about the old days a lot when we were in that old building.
Yeah.
And that building on 6th Avenue used to be a garage.
Oh my God, I didn't know.
And so, and I don't know if you'd ever been there. There was downstairs booths for the radio, but then upstairs in the back, there was a TV studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the TV studio was actually where the mechanics worked on the cars.
Yeah.
So the floor was not level.
Oh.
So we used to have and I think they still do today. We had cameras on wheels, and we would, you'd lock the wheels. But one night, whoever was in studio didn't
put the
lock the wheels. And so as I'm doing the news, the camera's moving. So I was just following the camera.
And this is live, right?
It was live. It was 100% live. And then the other interesting thing about that studio was that when it rained outside, it rained in the studio. Because of the ductwork, So I do remember doing a newscast, and it started raining out, and you could hear it on the roof, and then it started leaking through the HVAC onto the floor. And the fellow who was in the studio, looked at me, and I'm kind of like on the air and then off the air, throwing to a story, and then you're off for a couple of minutes while a news story plays.
Yeah.
So he grabs a garbage can and puts it underneath the leak, except the garbage can was metal or aluminum, and then so it made this massive noise, like a dripping noise whenever it leaked into the garbage can. So I remember days like that where we would do things. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was some of the great people that I worked with, including Mike Benny, who has now passed away, and Doug Jones, who recently retired. And it was those, people like that, Darren Coogan, people who've been in the industry for a really long time, who were big supporters and big motivators, but they were also fun. And they, both Mike and Doug and Darren, came to work every day with smiles on their faces. And they were happy to mentor people. And they were happy to always, and it was in a kind, supportive way. That they just, they really helped people. They really helped me. And I think I became who I am as a broadcaster today because of working with Mike and with Doug. And them just having quiet confidence in me and quiet support, but always willing to help out and offer suggestions and mentor people. And so I really believe now, I really believe in mentoring, especially women in the broadcasting industry, and helping them to succeed. And my role has changed a little bit at the CBC, and I'm as being behind the scenes, I'm mentoring people now. And they say, you bring a collection of who your mentors were to when you are a mentor. Another big mentor to me was Dave Barry, who worked for a long time at CKPG and now is the news director at the affiliate in Kamloops, CFJC.
In Kamloops, yeah. Is it being taught at in the college, broadcasting and journalism here at all, or is it still at BCIT?
It's still BCIT. Yeah, and funnily enough, one of the gals who I went to broadcast school with is now the head of the program.
Oh, interesting.
She was the smartest kid. So I latched on to the smartest kid.
That's good. So the if you kind of look forward now in terms from a career perspective, you're still young, really, and you're so much involved in these three. Where are things going as you look forward? How do people, because as we just talked about a little bit earlier, I look at Facebook, I look at social media, I look at all the other things that are happening, podcasting for one, radio stations that I listened to in Holland when I grew up, I sometimes listen to them now, but everything has changed in terms of what they did then, what they do now.
How is the way forward? I think, well, it's hard. It's been a hard time for media. I think the pandemic, I think journalists have been heavily scrutinized by the public over the pandemic. And I think that's been hard. It's been hard for people in the industry, and I think we've lost some people to that. I do think that private industry is cutting. It gets harder and harder because of cuts. So I think what will keep us going is doing the journalism that matters to people, asking the hard questions that people want to be asked, and to be as accurate as possible.
And that's sometimes a challenge. If I look at print media, like in Prince George, it has changed. The Prince George Citizen was here for a long, long time. It's still here, but it's not anymore the way it used to be.
Right.
Although it is still doing, I'm still amazed with some of the people that are there, Mark Nielsen and a number of other people that were there.
Arthur Williams there.
Yeah, Arthur Williams. And then, the Ted, forgot his last name.
Ted Clark.
Yeah, Ted Clark did I worked with him on something, and I was just absolutely amazed by, how professional they are, and I was very, very pleased about it. But all of that is changing, and it is and it isn't. There is still very, very much room for those professionals. I'm just kind of wondering what it will look like as we go forward, and will it become more integrated with other media, or will it become more in time, where like what you were doing is that this is in time, not just today or the day before. That kind of thing.
So the immediacy of it. And I think that's what, with the advent of video on demand or with Facebook, is there is a demand for things to be very timely.
Yeah.
Because somebody could just see a traffic accident and put it on Facebook right away. Yeah. Although I do have to mention that many broadcasters are bound by CRTC regulations, so we are governed by a body that tells us what we can and cannot do.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody posting on social media may not have to adhere to those rules and regulations.
Yeah. The other thing is, like what we are doing in terms of podcasting, this will be on tomorrow, so which is a good thing, so there we can, and that's probably why we have had good response. We try to find interesting guests and then hopefully do a good job of interacting and then make it available very quickly. I'm starting another one that actually tomorrow, also podcasting in a way, and it will be called On the Brink, Forest Industry and Transition. It's so much in the news and in the media that I feel that I have to do something separate about that from our other podcasting. We're starting it tomorrow, actually, and that should then be on the next day, on Wednesday.
So I'm curious, who will your first guest be?
Rob Schutz from Forest,
Yeah, that'll be very
Forest
interesting.
Industry Service,
Yeah,
Rob is very, very knowledgeable, and he's the first guest. And then, we just decided to do this in the last number of days. Then from there on in, it will include people from the industry. It will include people from government. We probably will include virtual, because it's sometimes difficult to bring people there. And we hope that our technology is such that we can do that effectively, from here. And so that will be the idea. And the whole idea is to talk about issues that are not necessarily clear to others, as to so many sawmills have shut down and pulp mills. There's so much talk in terms of, will there be an industry, what will it look like? Secondary manufacturing or the value-added manufacturing. How about communities like Mackenzie, Fort St. James, Vanderhoof, so all of those discussions are part of it. And then part of government or forest policy changes as to, that we got a half a dozen companies controlling 75% of the annual allowable cut, which in effect then makes them control it all. And a lot of those companies are not, most of their operations are elsewhere. And people ask questions about that, so, and those kind of issues, and what else can we do to make the industry more interesting? How can we add more social and economic value to this amazing resource? We have such an amazing country, in particular BC, and in particular northern BC. So much opportunity for industry and to attract investors and making products for markets, and those kind of things.
Well, that's certainly an issue you could talk about for however long. I mean, there's lots to dig into there.
Yeah. And so I'm excited about that. And so what I'm saying is podcasting would be a good forum for that, because it gets you a little bit deeper down into the issues, and especially if you have people that are involved in it, so it helps the public at large to kind of get hopefully a better feeling of the issues, and has been usually fairly popular if you do that. But I believe that podcasting will become increasingly more popular as a whole, and then but it still makes me think, what will it all look like as we go forward?
I don't know. I think that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to the public.
Yeah.
And I think it's just figuring out what the public wants.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at forums like Facebook, so immensely popular, by many, and then in some of the other media, right?
I do find Facebook is quite a northern BC thing.
Yeah.
I see more Twitter in the lower mainland.
Yeah.
But I do think Facebook is definitely northern BC.
Yeah. And then, the other ones, Anything you want to ask me?
Oh, anything I want to ask you? Oh.
Well,
I always
should
love...
I sit there now and you sit... No,
I always love... I don't know how long I've been interviewing you for. Probably 20 years.
Yeah.
I always love... I love this 2547 story. And your stories about growing up in Holland during the war, you've shared those.
Yeah.
I might have to think about that. What do you want to talk about?
Well, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be. But I always try to do, and that as you indicated, I was born in 1940. And then I was 5 years old when we were liberated by the Canadians, April the 12th, 1945, and it was tough, right? So because I don't remember that toughness, because if you grow up that way, that's the way it is. But my mom had 3 kids. I was the youngest. My sister 1 year older, my brother 2 years older, and my dad. Was the last time they saw him was in Rotterdam just before they bombed it, and then for 5 years they didn't know if he was dead or alive, and so she went through a very, very difficult period, especially the hunger winter of 1944-45. And we as kids would go in the mornings. We would go with gunny sacks into the railroad yards. If the adults would go there, they would shoot them. But with kids, we pick up anything edible or burnable, and then we would go home. And then, but I always still remember now is that to have hunger, I still feel that now, the hunger that becomes part of you. The other one was cold, because we only had the little thing in a small room that she kept heated, and we all kind of sat around. The rest of the house was cold.
Yeah.
And then anxiety that always stayed with me from that time forward, and and subsequent PTSD resulted, and then ADHD was already there, but and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. But so what I always have done, I feel I have to talk about that. So for about 10 years, I would go to all the schools in the region or in other places to talk about, what is the importance of the 2 minutes of silence? Why are we doing that? And what really does it mean? and how did it affect what the Canadians did, you know, in Europe? But how important was it? And so you know, and all the things around it, right? So, and the price they paid in a lot of cases, you know. So, and you know, so I'm again going. I think I'm doing something in Prince George and one of the schools, and then I'm doing 2 schools in Surrey on the 9th, I think, and you know, and I try to do that every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My dad grew up in Denmark during the war as well.
Yeah.
And I remember, I mean, he was quite young as well. He was born in 1938.
Yeah.
He's passed away now, but he told me, as a kid, he told me some pretty horrific stories.
Yeah.
And they sailed a ship, and I remember my grandma telling me that one night she peeled potatoes in the Copenhagen harbor and people swam out to eat the potato peels.
Yeah.
They were lucky they had, because they sailed a merchant ship, they had access to fresh fruit and vegetables. But, you know, my dad never, he hated flying.
Yeah.
Because of his experiences growing up during the war.
Yeah.
He found someone in a plane on a beach.
Yeah.
You know, and he was just a kid, just like you were just a kid.
Yeah.
So.
Saw far too much, right? You know, so.
Yeah.
And you know, so, but it's important to talk about it. So for me, although it's still emotional, you know, but I think it's very important.
So with that, does that make November 11th a hard day for you, or?
No.
No?
No, you know, I celebrate it, you know, with others, and but usually the day before, like on the 9th, I'm going to be in Surrey, and then I think on the 8th or so here in Prince George, and you know, so just to talk about it, and then we'll be here on the 11th, you know, then to remember, and you know, it makes it realize us, and then you know, and appreciate it. So it's one of those, you know, but then in Holland we're celebrating the liberation of Holland May the 5th, you know, and I always remember it was 1945, and you know, when the 75th year of that happened, and a lot of Canadians came over there, and I had the opportunity to go back to my birthplace, and you know, that was kind of, you know, interesting, and to meet so many Canadians are the Dutch love the Canadians, you know, even the little kids do. In schools they talk about it, and you know, very much part of Holland, and you know, they know all the history, and yeah, and you know, so yeah, it makes you again realize, you know, how unfortunate it is that looking at the Ukraine, and you know, and so many people getting caught in this terrible war that you know, that Putin created, really, you know, and I found it terrible, you know, and you know, we had the opportunity. Pat Bell has been quite active, you know, bringing some people over.
Yes, he's brought a family.
Yeah. And then we also paid for a family.
Okay.
2 weeks ago to come over, and you know, and then the day that of the invasion, I had to find. I wanted to put a flag up at the mill. I couldn't find the flag, you know. And he said, "Well, where do I get it?" I said, "Scott, find me a flag." And he said, "Well, it takes 2 weeks to get one." You know. I said, so I went down to the material store in on the Hard Highway. And I was wondering, I'd never go in store, like, and the lady said, "Are you looking for something?" I said, "Yeah, I want to make a flag. I need yellow and I need blue." And she said, "Okay, but is it," you know, I said, "For the Ukrainian flag. We're gonna make it ourselves. We make," and so she found it, and then I took it down to Annie's Sewing here on Dominion.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
yeah.
she sewed it together, and
Yeah.
I had 4 flags. And that same day, we kind of got it up there, and you know, so yeah. You know, you know, but if you think about it, you know, it's pretty sad that this should happen. You know, so senseless and so much damage. You know, all because of one individual, you know, so it makes you realize how fragile it all is, right? And that obviously happened in Second World War with Hitler. I don't blame the Germans, you know, we were all victims, right? And, you know, a lot of people say, well, you must have a bad feeling about Germans. I said, to the contrary, actually, you know, that when I was 5, within the next year or two, we already were interchanging students with other students on the other side of the border, you know, so.
Yeah, and I feel like the country shifted quite a bit. Like where my dad was born in Denmark, at one point was Germany because the borders kind of
he was right
around.
up against it. Well,
yeah.
then close
the
to that
south
we
of
are,
Denmark, yeah.
because we are in the extreme northeastern part, within 10 minutes from the German border. Go a little bit further, then by Emden, between Emden and Hamburg, you can turn into Denmark.
Yeah, so that's where my dad was born, was very close to the German border.
Beautiful, beautiful country.
Beautiful. Oh, I mean, all of it. Even Holland,
Yeah.
Germany, Denmark, just beautiful. It's stunning.
On the other hand, you know, Catherine, you know, I knew from the time that I was 5 years old, you know, and were liberated by the Canadians, April the 12th, as I said, and they had a small section of the Canadian Red Cross behind our house, about 25 people for about a month. And we as kids, we would go down there in the morning, and they fed us bread with cheese and butter, and was bigger than the bread, and everybody talked, but we didn't understand English, but we did, you know, and everybody was called Johnny. And I always knew from that point forward I would go to Canada, you know, so. And I tried to go when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me then. Then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years, and then I went to Canada when I was 24. And I always felt from the time that I was 5 years old, I was a Canadian, more so than that's where I belong, you know, and so that's where I would go.
It's home. Is it home?
Yeah, very much so. And the interesting part is that small section of Canadians behind our house, from the Dutch Red Cross, or from the Canadian Army Red Cross, in April of 1945, you know, the years later, when I came to Canada, I couldn't speak the language and became a supervisor of one of the mills. Then I was invited for dinner by the sales manager of that mill. His name was Jerry Wilmot, and I was so nervous. That was the first people that ever invited me. I couldn't speak the language well, and I was obviously nervous, you know. And then as we were sitting around the table, we talked about Holland, and he had been in Holland. And then we talked about the war. He was in the war, and then we started talking about it in Northern Holland, the town that I was born, Sappemeer. And he was the captain in that schoolyard.
Wow.
Behind our house.
Wow.
Yeah. Captain Jerry Wilmot.
Wow.
To take it one step further, and I'm a realist, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe, and no, you know, I'm a realist. The other part about it, as you know, where my mill is now, you know, we can see it virtually over here, you know, in downtown Prince George. The exact footprint of the mill where it is, up to 1964, it was called Norman M. Smith, that mill. That was owned by Captain Jerry Wilmot.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
Wow.
And there you go, halfway around the world.
Yeah.
How could that possibly happen?
I think that's meant to be. I think when things like that happen, it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And I also believe that it's a very, very small world.
Yeah.
Every place I've traveled, even when I go overseas,
Yeah.
I bump into somebody I know.
Yeah. Isn't that scary?
I mean, kind of. Well, sometimes I think I like to go away to be anonymous, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting on the subway in New York and somebody's looking at me. There's a woman across the street, across from me looking at me. She said, "Are you Catherine Hansen?"
Catherine!
Yes! So I bumped into people on the subway in New York. I mean, you know, and I think...
And I tell you, you know, that I don't know when it was anymore. My wife, myself, Sharon, and we went to New York, and it was on New Year's Eve, and you know how busy it gets around that area. So we took a taxi, and I'm trying to get, the people are right up against the taxi. I force the door open to get out, stand up. I'm looking at Paul Ramsey. That used to be, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
How could that possibly happen?
How could it happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's no vacation sometimes.
No. So thank you for being my guest. Obviously, for so many years I've been your guest.
Yes.
And so many
times.
Yes,
the roles are reversed.
Yeah, the roles are reversed. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, thank you for being my guest. And
thank you for having me.
I'm going to give you a copy of my book.
Great.
And did you have one already or not?
I have the ADHD one.
Did you have?
I have that one.
You have this one?
Yeah.
A signed one?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then how about this one?
This one, sure.
Against all odds, you know, this one is not, it's not about, it's an autobiography. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. But autobiography, it's not easy to write books. And then I knew if I was going to do it, I had to do it right. I'm not bragging about it. But I knew how, because I cannot say, well, I did it, that's not, is not a good one, I'll do another one. You only do one of them, you know, anyway, so I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, Catherine.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for being my guest. I'll give you a hug.
Absolutely.
If you're all hooked up, then afterwards I'll give you a hug. And I really appreciate you being my guest and sharing with me all your experience. And, you know, someday we're going to be sitting the other way.
Other way. I'm sure it'll happen sooner than later.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you.